Hi everybody, it's Steve Sefcik from Should Have Been Engineering, and I thought today that we'd touch on carb synchronization. Now, you know, for whatever reason, a lot of guys are afraid to synchronize their carbs, and I assume that that comes from the fact that they really don't know why they're doing what they're doing. And you know what, I've seen other carb sync videos, and whenever I see those carb sync videos, it's pretty hard to tell what's going on because you hear the bike running and maybe nobody's really done an explanation of what's going on. So I want to take a little different approach today, and it's going to be what you're trying to accomplish whenever you're syncing carburetors, not just to show, okay, look, this is me syncing. Let me also say this. When you're dealing with carburation, multiple carburation, you have basically 4 chances to screw it up. And that's really about what it comes down to, because, you know, getting 1 cylinder to run good or 2 cylinders or 3 cylinders to run good isn't going to mean that you have a good running machine. You have to have all 4 cylinders running good. So any one of them that you screw up is going to come across as, regardless, it's a poor running motorcycle. Okay? So you kind of have to pay attention to all the little things, and particularly when it comes to carburation, you need to do that. I'm going to go ahead and start showing you on this set of our carburetor bodies exactly what it is that we're trying to accomplish when we are synchronizing carburetors, and then we'll go over to this bike and I'll show a set that's been synchronized, which is, you know, the final product that you're going to be looking for. Okay, first of all, let me show the main components that you're going to be dealing with when you're doing the carb sync. First of all, this is the idle knob, typically located right here. This is what's setting the idle speed on the number 2 carburetor. These screws over here are what actually you'll be adjusting to get the other carburetors to have the same vacuum signal as the number 2 carburetor. So if number 2 is having, let's say, 8 inches of vacuum, you're going to be trying to match number 1, number 3, and number 4 to have that same inches of vacuum. What you're basically doing when you turn these screws is you're changing where the throttle plate is in relation to the bore. And what you're trying to do is to get each one of your cylinders so they're all pulling the same amount of vacuum. In other words, if number 2 had 8 inches of vacuum, you'd be wanting to make all your other carburetors 8 inches of vacuum. That's accomplished by adjusting this screw. This would affect carburetor number 1, this one will affect carburetor number 3, this one will affect carburetor number 4. Typically you'll use the number 3 after you've adjusted number 4. So what you'll do is adjust number 4 vacuum to number 3 vacuum. Adjust number 1 vacuum to number 2 vacuum. Then come back and adjust number 3 vacuum, which will bring 3 and 4 down to or up to the number 2 vacuum. What you're actually doing is ensuring that all 4 of the carburetors have the throttle plates in essentially the same position, and that each of the cylinders is performing the same amount of work. Let me show one of the problems that you can have when you're trying to synchronize your carburetors that's kind of a problem that you've actually created. Remember that I said that the throttle plate adjustment and then the idle adjustment for number 2 is going to be set by this knob. Well, I've seen guys where they've come back trying to do their sync and they screw the number 3 all the way down. Well, whenever they screw number 3 all the way down and they're trying to close number 3 for whatever reason, if you screw this all the way down, basically the effect it's going to have is opening up number 2, because it's going to lever against number 2, and it'll take number 2 off of the throttle stop. At that point, your throttle adjustment knob isn't helping anything. So you're going to have to revisit that, back these screws out. If you look at these, you'll see that the gaps on all of them is basically about the same. If you see something where this is run all the way down like this, well, you know what? There's going to be a problem there, because what's happened, and you can, I don't know if you can see this right here with the camera, but number 3 and number 4 are basically closed, and it's push number 1 and number 2 way open. That's not the way this is supposed to be. These have to be essentially where they have pretty similar gapping up underneath here. So if you're working on your own carburetors and you've got this wound all the way down, you're asking for a problem right from the get-go when you first start trying to set up your sink. Alright, here's the setup. I've got this engine idling. I've already synchronized it. As you can see, I've got a Morgan Carb tune, and I've got an auxiliary fuel supply. Doesn't need to be anything special. I'm just using a large syringe here so that I can feed gas to the engine while I'm synchronizing it. Now, if you look what's going on here, each one of these is showing a measurement of vacuum. You can see that I actually have number 1 and number 4 a little bit high. The reason for that is that typically when you start opening the throttle, number 1 and 4 will show a little bit of a lower vacuum. That's because they're not, the linkage is kind of getting a little bit of slack in it, and it'll show up on number 1 and number 4 carburetors. So this is about what you're going to be looking for when you're done synchronizing. You can see that the engine's running very, very smooth, and hopefully whenever you do your synchronizing, you're not going to be afraid. You understand what it is that you're doing, and you'll do a good job. This needs to be done. It's the only way you're going to be able to get a good solid idle. And in fact, while we're at it, I'm going to mess the idle up a little bit by turning one of the screws. I'm just going to adjust number 1. See, what I've done is I've opened the throttle on number 1. It's showing less vacuum, and I think you can probably hear the way the engine's running. It's not running as cleanly. Now I'm going to close the throttle on number 1 a little bit, bring it back where it was. And you can hear how much better the idle is. Alright everybody, I hope I've kind of demystified the carb sync process. It's really a very, very simple thing to do. It's nothing to be afraid of. You're really not going to screw anything up if you follow along some of the tips that I've had here. As always, you can see me over on my website, shouldhavebeenengineering.com, or you can see me on the Concours Owners Group forums. And remember, if you own a Concours, you need to join Carb. Thank you.